Hello and welcome back to Slot Leader. I'm here joined by Tom Flynn, my co host and my friend. And today we are going to have an interesting conversation with the CEO of HAL8, the company that's building Apex Fusion. If you don't know, the Apex Fusion is basically do I say it? Is it a clone of a? It's not a clone. Actually, it's a next iteration of Cardano. And Tom actually works in HAL8 as an executive. But I will let him talk about that. So we're going to talk about HAL8 with the CEO of HAL8, Jerry. I forget his last name
Very
is
Fragiskatos, very Greek.
very Greek, exactly. But he's an amazing guy, ex-IOG, just like Tom. And I wanted to just basically invite him over to pick his brain about the history behind Apex Fusion and their vision and, his thoughts about the markets. And I think market has surprised us all this past week with a couple of really good events. The first one that I really got excited about was Kraken getting a banking license, pretty much. Or they're getting an account in the Federal Reserves. I think so.
Yeah,
That's the whole, to be more exact, and it is a monumental event, as it shows that the two systems are converging. There's a lot of debate about how we should move forward, especially in the United States, about you know what the future of finance should look like. In my mind, I think crypto is just by orders of magnitude more ready for the next chapter in the finance, and all these artificial sort of bottlenecks that exist in Web 2 and traditional finance are just basically negated or overcome, have been overcome by Web 3. Tom definitely has his own opinion, so I'll let him talk about that also.
yeah. Look, I'm excited for this one. In fact, there's not maybe a better time to sort of have a conversation about the state of the industry and market conditions. And there's actually not anyone I know who follows market trends better than Jerry. He has a history in traditional enterprise prior to coming to Web3. He worked for Dell. I'm sure on the interview he'll give a little bit about his background. And he's from the beginning been very big on what he calls discovery-based planning, right? Which is not just launching into a business because you got an idea, but basically getting feedback from the market real time. And in Web3, it's very important to take that approach because people in Web3 are very familiar with having to pivot their approach over and over and over, but not just doing that like a shot in the dark, actually following along with the current trends, trying your best to keep up with them. If you can, stay ahead of them. And that's something that he's really brought to Apex Fusion. And but doing it in a way that's very coherent, in a way that tries to create as much stability as possible for the company and for the teams involved, instead of doing it running roughshod and breaking things. And that is a real skill to have because it's difficult. It's difficult to do, especially when you're in an industry that moves as fast as Web3.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I when I came across Apex Fusion, the idea of having a separate compute layer just basically not blew my mind, but I mean it just brought back that original architecture that I was kind of in love with. So I'm glad that there is the team that has built on Cardano, or built Cardano, I should I say,
Yeah.
with Duncan Coutts and everybody else joining your team, um, are actually taking that approach and building Cardano in a different flavor. The way I look at it is that you have Linux in different flavors, and now you have the Ouroboros in different flavors also. And I think it only helps the Cardano ecosystem as it gives people optionality to conduct their business on a different level, on a different layer, etc., etc. And I'm super excited that this project exists, and I definitely want to support it and bring um, the people who are building it into the show to shed some light on their endeavors.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Umed. I mean, to me, it's about progressive evolution, right? And it's interesting. There's so many ups and downs in our industry, but the way things are converging is that if you kind of keep that mindset and you keep making contributions, there are really crazy things like coming into place right now where we're in such a unique time, right? So the industry is reinventing itself in such an extreme way. There's a question about the continued role of dApps because of the role of agentic AI gaining steam. Like those of us who are working in tech, we're seeing it. We're the first industry to really being disrupted because we're right in the middle of it. And it's, let me tell you, it's very disruptive. Every day, there's something new that is game changing. There is, how this is going to impact all of our lives and jobs and everything like that. And it's happening at the time when, the markets have been down and people are struggling, but at the same time we're facing a tsunami of opportunity like never seen before. And like we've talked about on the show several times, there's not enough block space in the world to
Yes.
accommodate all of the transactions, everything that's going to be needed for agentic AI. So that's the opportunity. It comes with challenges, but we are literally on the verge of a massive sea change, and it's why now is such an interesting time to kind of be looking at these things and talking about these topics.
Yeah, in my experience, these times of lull, so to say, on the market are the best times because you're not distracted by the price every 15 minutes or whatnot.
You try
So
not to be.
yes, yes. I mean, I stopped looking at the price a long time ago. It looks like it's been up and down and whatnot. Well, Bitcoin went back to 72, I think 73,000 this past week. I know these recordings come up, maybe a week or two later, but we try to cover the markets and stay current as much as possible. But hey, Tom, I wanted to ask you and your opinion about the Clarity Act and all this drama that's going around it. What is your opinion about that?
Well, of course, with something as important as this, there's going to be a lot of debate and there's going to be a lot of concern. And it's likely that whatever happens, not everybody will be pleased with the outcome, but it is a move forward for the industry to get this done because it will, to some degree, create exactly what the name of the bill is, clarity, right? It'll give people a sense of the direction they should head, what they should work on. And honestly, that is probably one of the most powerful things that we can have in Web3 at this point is clarity. So people aren't shooting in the dark. There is enough uncertainty going around when it comes to the pace and the evolution of tech. One of the things that we're kind of seeing right now is that the traditional way of thinking about and approaching crypto, about building ecosystems and all of the things around that, that is dramatically changing, right? A lot of the different like businesses and opportunities that kind of sprung up around that approach are changing dramatically right now, and we don't know exactly what it's going to end up like. But with agentic AI, AI agents are better customers for blockchain than humans for a lot of different reasons. So we don't necessarily know what that's going to mean, but adding some clarity is going to help provide the stability so people can find their place.
Absolutely. And I think this, the Clarity Act, especially in the United States, when enacted, since the US dollar is the de facto, de facto financial rails for the world, it will have repercussions around the globe. Now, I'm kind of surprised that the banks themselves did not accept the latest version of the Clarity Act, which allowed for I think the sticking point here is the crypto platforms like Coinbase being able to offer yield to their customers who are holding USDC or USDT, and because it directly competes with the bank, because they are afraid of deposits flight. If you have in competing, to be honest with you.
Right.
So because right now, if you put your money in the bank, you get nothing, and you get charged a monthly fee of $15 or whatnot. I mean, this is just a non-starter for a lot of people compared to what you would get in a, if you put your money, let's say, in Coinbase and earn, let's 4% on your just cash, right? So and I think it's a battle that's worth fighting for, because yes. I believe the banks have a protected status, and they have a leverage. There's no other way you can go around it and whatnot, and it's good to have an alternative for people,
Yeah.
So we'll see where it goes. I think the administration is especially after having been debanked in the past, has a sympathetic ear.
Anybody that's had a crypto company has been debanked.
That's
right.
That's right. I mean, that's that talk about this whole thing, blowing out in their face, this choke 2.0 kind of thing. My take is you cannot just say no to progress if the technology improves the speed, improves the convenience, improves the quality of life. You can hold it for a little while, but it's just the same thing as a horse carriage versus the automobiles. Eventually it will take over.
There is a certain amount of inevitability to it. So like at the macro level, it makes sense that anybody that has hegemony over a certain area is going to try to protect what they have, what they think they have. But the ethos of Web3 and the direction the entire world is going, in fact, it needs to be that you lean into these changes and you find ways to participate where everybody benefits. Because when you create that constriction, when you try to hold back to protect what it is out of fear, you're going to actually hurt yourself in the long run, because other people are going to do the things that you could be doing, instead of like figuring out the way to make it work, figuring out the way for everybody to mutually benefit. And then they'll end up being disrupted in the long run, and they'll be hurting progress in general. And then there will be blowback in the future as people look at the individuals and entities that stop progress, right? And that's an inevitability.
That's right. And I think it just goes to show that progress is just it's like a train. You can't stop it. Once the genie is out of the bottle, and the technology has proven itself over what, 10, 11 years or whatnot. So it is at this point, that meme comes into my mind, to be honest, with the guy who's like trying to mop up the ocean. Have you seen that one? There's a guy who's trying to mop up standing in the shore of the ocean and trying to basically push the water back, and you kind of see that I kind of see that in my mind when the regulators or the incumbents are trying to like basically shore up the thing. It's just not going to happen. I think the best thing to do is just to understand this technology, and yes, of course, we don't want it to be used for nefarious sort of purposes, but also we need to recognize that the benefits that it brings, just like internet, will far outweigh all the negatives that might come out of using it. So I think a lot of incumbents, New York Stock Exchange included, DTCC, and all these other players have realized that at the very least they can save some costs on the cost of running infrastructure. And I think that's the first thing that comes into my mind, and I've been like talking about it for 5 years, and about this this very unique feature of blockchains of basically increasing the transparency and the settlement time, or reducing the settlement time. But yeah, it's great to see incumbents coming to the same conclusions and seeing the light, so to say. But
we're at this time where all that work that you and others have done on educating people is now starting to pay off, because in all industries you have individuals who really understand what blockchain can do to change their industry, to change the world. And this is really, the origin of all of this is really about awareness, right? It's really about making people aware that there are alternatives that are better, and also making people aware of the inefficiencies and the problems in the legacy systems. I mean, this
Yeah.
is why Web3 is so disruptive, because it gives us a means to make real change, but you have to have a basic understanding of the need for change first, right? And we're seeing that in the world in a new way. The Epstein files is an obvious, example of kind of people becoming aware of things that need to change. And, to talk about nefarious purposes, like financial sector like to throw a lot of shade on crypto for that very reason, like using that as a way to always like give crypto a black eye. Let's not pretend that there aren't all kinds of shenanigans and nefarious things going on in the legacy system,
Oh
because
yes,
they're
yes.
just hidden away. They've been kept
Yeah.
a secret. So let's not pretend.
That's true, and they try to. I mean, it's really hard to keep track of nefarious things in the banking system because it's so intransparent,
Yeah.
untransparent. It's opaque. So and in many cases, in my opinion, they just get away by paying the fine because the payouts of being you know uh, non-compliant is higher, and then there's like a slight chance that you will not get caught, and with all these scandals of LIBOR and things like that, I mean, there's just the incentives basically dictate the outcomes, right? So and I'm not blaming them in a way because the system works in such a way that if you're trying to maximize the shareholder value or whatnot, and let's say that you have an option, the option is that I do something that's not very accepted, or like price fixing LIBOR, for instance. Let's say that the outcome gives you a payout of 100, but the fine is 220, right?
Right, right.
You already are in a profit. Yes, I mean, unless there are like really serious repercussions for people who perpetuate these things beyond just slapping a fine and then letting them go. I don't. I think these things will continue. But anyway, I digress. We are going to go into the segment of the interview shortly, and I definitely want to pick the brains of people like yourself and Jerry to shed some light on these issues and other issues, and can't wait to learn more about Apex Fusion and what you guys are cooking.
Yeah, should be fun.
Hello and welcome to the interview section of Slot Leader. Today I have a very special guest, Jerry Fragiskatos. He is the chief commercial officer of an ex-chief commercial officer of at IOG. And Tom, as you know, is used to work for IOG. Also, I think it was under Jerry. Also,
Commercial director, yeah.
commercial director. Yes, exactly.
Dynamic duo, Tom and Jerry.
Jerry. Oh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I'm super excited to have them here. As you know, I've been a very staunch supporter of people building on Cardano, actually building Cardano, including these two gentlemen who I've met many times actually in their capacity as officers in IOG to try to bring some commercial sort of flavor into the Cardano ecosystem. I'm super glad that they have ventured off and branched off and are working on a flavor of Cardano Ouroboros that is basically bringing back the old architecture of separating a settlement layer from the compute. I will let Jerry, the CEO of HAL8 currently, talk about that and go deep, do a deep dive into what they are doing. I think it's an amazing project for those of you who haven't explored it. But without too much talking, I will let Jerry basically talk about the history of Apex Fusion and what they're working on right now.
Yes, and I think let's start off with the beginning of the journey. So I come from traditional tech. I come from traditional business. Engineer. Done work all around the world and so forth. And I got the luck of getting into crypto in 2019 under Charles at IOG and in Cardano. And I fell in love with Cardano as a platform. I think they made the right technological choices. It was visionary and so forth. I think the broader industry is yet to understand why the Cardano community is so passionate. And a lot of them think it's because it's some form of cult and all this kind of stuff that they say, et cetera, et cetera. But what they don't understand is beneath all of that, there is some serious technology that was years and years and years and years and years ahead of its time. And that time is starting to come now. So it also took some choices that, from a commercial perspective, I believe hampered its progress. Okay. So when I left IOG in 2023, I joined up with Tom and a few others to kind of take the vision that we had for Cardano and spirit of open source, revive it in a version that's more commercially oriented, that's battle tested, that's looking to solve the various trade-offs, because they're not mistakes. Like, this is an issue. This is something that people often like confuse. Everything you do in life has trade-offs. So Cardano is a very purist, decentralized, formally verified blockchain. Anything that has centralization attached to it, they're allergic to, right? So this is why stablecoins took such a long time to get there, which with USDCX. That's why it's, interoperability to layer zero. And I will venture to say that the inspiration for those two things came from Apex Fusion, because we did those last year, right? We did them about 6 a year, and then all of a sudden we got USDC and layer zero on Cardano, which is fantastic, which is great, which allows for greater interoperability between Apex Fusion and Cardano, even more so. So let's go back to first principles. What did Cardano get right? And what do we think they'd made some trade-offs on that we took different trade-offs on? What they got right was the vision, was a separation of the execution layer and the compute layer. And that really does solve the trilemma, which is what Ethereum tried to do, but did it incorrectly. So they also tried to do it, but their settlement layer is competing with their execution layers. And the other thing that Cardano got right was native liquid stake in Ouroboros. All that time they took to do it correctly paid off, because it is truly the most decentralized, one of the most decentralized proof of stake platforms with native liquid staking, which people just, I don't understand why they don't see. Every other thing that needs liquid staking derivatives and all this kind of extra layering on top of it, they got that right. Okay. Where did they make trade-offs? They didn't separate the execution layer. They kept it with the settlement layer, which makes it slow, right? They added a governance layer on top of it called Catalyst, which is drawing treasury to fund future developments, which also creates some trade-offs, because that is sell pressure, right? You give tokens to projects from the treasury to build things, and if you're not mindful of it, then that's a net negative to the project. It also pollutes the layers, right? It puts it all into one stack. So what we did is we solved the trilemma on our version, which is what the original vision was, which is a separation of layers. So we started with Prime, which is a copy of Cardano without the execution and governance layer, using Ouroboros. And we reset the inflation to 10% and to go downwards to bootstrap the network. That's been massively successful. We have over 200 to 300 operators. So that network is fully decentralized and functions as its own network without any need for anything else, actually. It could continue its life forever without anybody as a decentralized proof of stake Bitcoin, because it's UTXO, it's Ouroboros, native liquid staking. It has its own value proposition. What we did is added two layers, one called Nexus and one called Vector. Nexus is the EVM chain. That's a layer 2. That's the execution from the EVM side. That was launched since August. Its primary is interoperability. That's where we work with layer 0. And so we're connected to 150 blockchains, and with Stargate, where we brought USDC over to it from that angle. Now with USDCX, it creates an interesting angle for the next chain. So Vector, which we consider our crown jewel, right? So basically, at this point, you could say, okay, we kind of more or less copied what Cardano did, added a layer to EVM, which I think also, well, there was a previous attempt at that. I'm trying to remember the name of the project.
One chain or something?
Not One Chain. One Chain is the bridging technology.
Okay.
they did an Ethereum version of they did this, but again they were a bit early for it, and so we got the layers there. But vector is our crown jewel. This is where the deep research is going in. This is where the agentic stuff really comes to life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So vector is a less decentralized version of Cardano, tweaked for performance and low cost. So think UTXO, but at the speed of Base or Solana, which is groundbreaking. Okay. Now we're working with the original researchers of Cardano and also proposing this on the Cardano as a CIP. It has an official number and everything, called Ouroboros Takis, which makes it even faster and even more attuned to the agentic economy, because agents need determinisms, security, and speed, and also guardrails. This is like, we are at game-changing point of our project. The convergent AI and our project has met in a significant way. How so? Charles and IOG and Cardano made the best choices from a security and high assurance standpoint. They did research, formal verification, functional programming. What was the trade-off of that? Highly specialized programmers in the world, highly expensive, very few. What has AI done? Destroyed all of that. In other words, all of Solidity, account-based models, Java, all these programming languages, what are they built for? To make it easier for apes like humans to program on them. But they're less secure, right? But they made the sacrifice because there's a deeper pool of developers on it. All that has disappeared because you have the most talented program in the world called Claude that can now program ease of use dApps using Haskell and using UTXO. It's a complete another game changer. And we had a validation in the market because Canton Network, which is servicing NASDAQ, DTCC, and so forth, use the same stack, UTXO functional programming. They use DAML, which is a sister of Haskell, right? So we've been proven that these are the right choices, but the difference is that we're at the right time of the market now, even with depressed prices, to take advantage of these choices and to accelerate there. So we're heavily, deeply in now to make Vector the best chain for agentic finance, best chain for agents, and subsequently the best chain for dApps in general, because you can still use AI to program traditional dApps. Like how hard is, like just envisage, how hard is it for now to tell Claude, take the open source code of Uniswap, make it Haskell, put it on Vector, make it ready for agentic finance.
You definitely nailed hit the nail on the head here, Jerry, because I was just talking to Tom about different kinds of leverages, right? In the past we had the labor leverage. You have a company that has lots of people, and that becomes like a leverage that boosts the company's profits and whatnot. Then we have capital. Financing is another form of leverage. Then we moved into basically social leverage. The social influencers are, people with leverage and whatnot. And now I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, AI is bringing the leverage into the same concept of leverage, but into programming. So let's say that you have 100,000 really good Haskell programs around the world, but you need only one of them to review the code that Claude writes, and you basically probably will be operating as if you had probably 50 or 100 of them working for you.
So it's actually, this is the thing that people make big mistakes about this. It's like when you build more highways in a city, you get more traffic because there's more demand for people, cars. The same thing's going to happen here. In other words, 100,000 Haskell programmers are not going to become 10. They're going to stay 100,000, but they're going to do the work of 1 million or 10 million programmers, because programming has been expensive for companies. A lot of people have crappy websites, don't use crypto, don't do this because it's too expensive for them, or they don't understand, or they don't have a tech department, right? So my thesis is that it's all wrong. That basically, yes, at the beginning there will be some attrition because separate out people that know how to use AI and people that don't. People that don't know how to use AI should be taking courses right now and using AI now. You're not going to survive the job market if you don't know how to use agents. right? But for those people, and if people upskill towards that, it's not the workforce is going to shrink. The same workforce is going to do 10 times more.
Yeah.
I think that's really what's going to happen, with some attrition of people that just can't bridge the gap. That's just how it goes. So back in my consulting days and back in digital transformation, all this kind of thing, system integration, there was a concept that was, I think, coined by Accenture called the frozen middle. In other words, corporations with their labor advantage end up creating a middle management layer. So it starts with the executives. They have a vision, they have an execution, and they tell their middle manager or their upper manager to do this. Then they tell their middle managers. They have teams below them that manage people above, and there's politics that happen at this level. It creates inefficiencies
Yes.
and so forth. It's called the frozen middle. All those jobs are gone.
Gone. Yeah.
Gone. So the people that are really going to be damaged by middle managers, team managers, people that need people to do their work, et cetera, because that all gets replaced by agents. But it doesn't replace more than that. This people get confused. They think AI is going to replace everything. No, there's the execution layer, there's AI, and there's the human execution layer. And it's iterative. Because if you ever use AI, it never does the right thing at the beginning. You always have to use it, do it again, give it to another AI, double check its work and so forth. And don't forget, tokens cost money.
Yes.
So people,
but they're still cheap. They're still cheap than hiring another developer doing the same amount of work.
I'm not sure that's the case, to be honest.
You're not? Sure. Okay.
Yeah. So yes, they're cheap compared to first world labor, but third world labor at one point, and those third world labor will be using AI. I think the combination of human AI is the killer combo, because you need a human to monitor how many tokens they're using. So there's a lot of studies coming out now that they just give their CTOs and their engineers like free reign on the tokens and on the AI, and they're costing them a fortune because they just use it like it's a free resource. It's not a free resource, right? So there's still that level of human that's required. Every company needs less, which will create more companies.
Yes.
That's all. That's what's the end. Now, in the middle of it, you're going to get like the blocks that get rid of half their staff. We're going through that process of getting much leaner because we're taking advantage of AI tools, et cetera, et cetera. But ultimately, what does AI need? It needs constraints. It needs guardrails. So what do you want? Do you want an agent on Ethereum with blind signing? You want to give it blind signing rights, right? Or do you want it to be in UTXOs where it has a lot of constraints? It can't do whatever it wants, right? No, we're ahead of the game here. We're about to leapfrog Solidity, and we're about to leapfrog Ethereum. Now, that doesn't mean that it goes away. They're going to do their version, and they're going to figure it out. That Vitalik has a strawberry map roadmap and this kind of thing, and they'll be abstracted. They'll figure it out. Ethereum, I'm not worried about them. They're going to get there, but we're there first. We're already there.
Yeah, Jerry. With regards to Vector, I think we should explain to the viewers that it's not another indexer or another sort of layer that basically commits back to Cardano, and there's like two nodes doing it. I think we need to clarify that there is a consensus mechanism behind it. Even though Apex token does migrate from one chain to another, it is a fully blown, self-contained consensus mechanism that, settles and follows its own sort of set of rules.
Yeah, I think you said it yourself because you are an operator of that network, if I'm not mistaken. So you're probably a better expert to explain that to the audience than I am, but you're absolutely correct. It is its own blockchain. It runs by itself. It's faster. It's faster. It's centralized, and it's getting faster with Takis. It's a bit like Kusama was on the Polkadot world, right? We're like a sister chain that you could go faster, you can try things faster than Cardano, because Cardano has a legacy that it needs to deal with. So I think it's going to be a lot of back and forth between Cardano and Apex Fusion from an innovation standpoint, because you have a faster boat that you can try things on Apex Fusion. We can innovate quicker, we're leaner, we don't have a massive organization like they do, but we also benefit from their massive organization, and when they do research, we benefit from that, and vice versa. So when Laos figures itself out and so forth, we'll benefit from that. And when we do Takis and put it on Vector, Cardano could benefit from that. It also could benefit from partner chains moving forward. So then the model becomes, this is the model for partner chains, right? So, and we, guess what? We asked for $0 from Catalyst.
Oh yeah, Catalyst has been dissolved, by the way, right? So it's just going back into the Cardano Foundation, I think.
Well, dissolve, it's still there as a treasury system. It's still there to pay out money at one point, and
Yeah.
we asked for $0. So we've done all this self-bootstrapped without any Catalyst funding.
I mean, that's the best way to do about it, and it kind of brings me to the point of governance. Can you tell us, what you have done on the governance side differently, and why you have chosen that sort of architecture rather than decentralized government? I think decentralized governments has pros and cons, but I would like to hear your opinion on that and what you have done differently.
So from our perspective, the decentralized governance solution has not been found, right? There's been experiments, different iterations, and they still haven't, I don't think, beaten a more human-centric governance process, because you don't remove the human from the process, just a different tech stack, right? So decentralized governance, unfortunately, goes two ways. It either goes to mob rule, where basically the people who know how to game the system the best and have the right connections and know how to market and get the funding, and then it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best project, right? Or it goes the other way, where it's super centralized anyways, and it's just, so they realize the centers doesn't work. Isn't this what's happening? Who dissolved Catalyst? How decentralized Catalyst if it was dissolved, right? Means, hey, wait a second, this is unruly. This is not working. Let's dissolve it. Well, the decision to dissolve it, that's a centralized decision, isn't it? And give it to the foundation, which is another centralized entity. So we just skipped it, went straight to the foundation. So we structured the foundation in a way where the deed in Switzerland covers for that. So we built the deed in a way where the foundation has a fiduciary duty to promote and to bring value to the network. So they can't just sit on their hands and just stake and do nothing. They have to do something. That's part number one. Then we put a 7-person council. So we put the decentralization in the human layer. And if at any point there is a magical governance system that solves humanity's biggest problems since the beginning of time, which, as you can tell, I'm very doubtful, we will adopt that system, right? So the foundation also has a mandate to outsource as many activities as possible and keep as lean as possible. So we did that through a legal layer and through a human layer. The tech for us is secondary. So we often do some blockchain. The technology is going to solve the human problem. It doesn't. The human problem just gets faster and cheaper with technology. So I don't think that decentralized governance has found its legs. We took a decision to keep it as it is. If at one point there is some magical solution that comes out that, you have an AI genius philosopher king that can use decentralized infrastructure, okay. But until that point, we separated out. We kept it with humans. They have the different pots of tokens. Mindful of inflation, they'll make sure they're not giving away 2 tokens to you. So all that kind of stuff, humans are very, very, very good at, right? Whereas decentralized systems are less good at that. And I think we saw it with Catalyst. It was a phenomenal experiment. But what were the results? The results were gamification, lots of projects took money that went nowhere. People that were more prominent on X got more money versus projects that probably deserve the money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Probably within are some that were good and some that came out, but I think just having humans triage that would have been an easy process. But, with a check and balance, with a proper legal structure, with. So that's kind of what we did. We just brought it to that. So we have a Swiss foundation, launch a token. They're in charge of governance, 7-person council, strict deed about what they can and cannot do. We have HAL8, which is a Abu Dhabi-based labs. That's the one I'm CEO of. That's the one that developed the platform. And we have a U.S. entity left dormant until the U.S. Congress figures its shit out. Yeah. And they still haven't figured their shit out. Get off your asses, get the Clarity Act passed so we can work in the U.S. It's ridiculous. It's freaking ridiculous.
I would add to that, Jerry, too, right? There's something about the mindset of the project that I think is quite special. When we started the project, we really tried to position ourselves to not be one monolithic tech labs who was running the project, and we worked with a constellation of partners to build out the ecosystem. The contributions of Ethernal, of MVP Workshop, of TX Pipe, all the different companies that we work with and continue to work with. We really tried to give everybody an equal stake and ownership in the ecosystem, and really work together well as partners. And that goes for the founding entities as well. The relationship between the foundation and the labs is quite strong. Everybody's pulling in the same direction in a very coherent manner, and just really approaching this like a business. And to me, that's pretty powerful. But this is probably a good time to kind of segue a little bit more into the state of the industry and the market conditions, because some of the things that you mentioned there, and Umed and I were talking before you came on about what an interesting inflection point that we're in Web3, and how disruptive it is with agentic AI. Yet at the same time, the markets are down, sentiment is down. It's kind of a perfect storm of opportunity for those of us that can manage to work through it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in Web3 since, or we're probably going to change the word Web3 again, call it something else, since 2019. And we tried to commercialize during that period of time. We did get some traction on Cardano, the Ministry of Education Ethiopia, the Dish Network, and all that kind of stuff. And they ended up being experiments. We ended up doing some things with them. But in the end, wasn't ready, right? In other words, not that Cardano wasn't ready, or they weren't ready. The industry wasn't ready on both sides. I've never seen a bigger disparity between price of tokens and people that want to use the technology. So, and the biggest use cases are AI, are RWAs, are stable coins, which is just another form of RWAs. And those are getting real traction, like not fake traction, proof of concepts, stunts that they were in the previous cycle. No, real traction. And we took inspiration from two chains. I think we didn't mention the second one. We took inspiration from Polygon as well, right? So our Nexus chain is based on Polygon Edge, and a lot of the team that we brought on was from Polygon. Because back in the previous cycle, we were quite, I was, as a chief commercial, I was looking at Polygon and really interested in what they were doing and all the enterprise plays they were doing. But at the end, they were also just glorified proof of concepts, just with more money, right? But what they've done, and what Sandeep is doing, I think is quite interesting. He's really pivoted Polygon towards AI, and the prediction markets came out of Polygon, which is an incredible feat, and payments, right, which is stablecoins. So he's recognized that the commercial realities, and he's pivoted his chain, or Polygon as a community has pivoted towards these use cases. And let me tell you, like, it's funny because I was in Dubai last year before all the war, and I went to a crypto conference and a finance conference. It was Finance Week and Bitcoin Mina, and the disparity of enthusiasm, of optimism, could not have been starker. The Bitcoin conference was kind of boring. You had Michael Saylor up there kind of redoing his shtick, which I'm a huge fan of Bitcoin, and I'm a Bitcoiner myself, and so forth. But it wasn't exciting. There was no innovation. There's nothing big coming down the pipeline. It was just, block, tick-tock. It was, and so forth. And then a lot of concerns about quantum risk and all this kind of stuff. So the sentiment was quite low. It wasn't very high. And this was post the October 10 crash. So that was also the reason for it. But then when we went to Finance Week, the enthusiasm was through the roof. And I got so excited about our industry at that conference because all the banks were there, all the big companies were there. They're all not if we're going to go to blockchain, when and how we're going to do it. And looking at it from a technological perspective, they couldn't care less about the price of Bitcoin, right? They couldn't care less about the price of crypto. They were finally getting the legal guardrails to actually use the technology for their benefit. So I think that's where we're at right now in the industry. We're maturing from price go up to, well, what's the real value, right? Which is where we started from, is we're trying to produce real value. Now, of course, we're not immune to the market conditions, but at the same time, that's not our goal. So we're here to produce real value, real use cases, and there's never been a better time in the industry to do that. Also, we partner with Ethereum to do our router bridge. And so we're 4 chains actually. We're 3 chains plus a bridge. And my thesis is that as agentic finance and agents become more and more prominent, that the need for block space is going to go exponential. So you're going to need more and more chains to offer that block space. But then bridges become even more and more important. So I think interoperability, so a term we used last cycle, and is starting to gain some traction this cycle, but I think in the next 5 or 10 years may become the prominent part of things. So partnering with Layer 0, which we pioneered and Cardano copied, you're welcome. We actually talked to them about talking to Cardano. And I think they're going to gain a lot of prominence over the next 5 or 10 years because bridging seamlessly between chains is going to be the future. And then abstracting all of that so no one even knows which chain you're using is going to happen. The other big thing I discovered is intents. I'm not sure if you ever heard about this. So the Near platform kind of pioneered this to a certain extent. And basically now, we're going from bots to agents. So agents are human language, not code and finance. So where it used to be you have to have bots to do A, B, and C. Now you have agents that you ask them to do, trade Cardano from Cardano to Apex to Vector. I want this or that, or even more find me this cheapest chain to do X, Y, and Z with this asset, do this, that, the other. And then there's a bunch of resolvers in the background, bots that take care of it for the AI. So that's where we're headed. And then all of the blockchain becomes abstracted. And it's just you're competing with a bunch of blockchains. But the good news is, as I mentioned, you build more highways, you get more traffic. And I think that's what we're going to get to. It just takes time. That's all.
That's awesome, Jerry. Now you mentioned a couple of things here, and I wanted to kind of go deep down in this direction. So you're saying that there's going to be a lot of need for real world assets and real world utilities. Would you care to share with us what exactly you guys are working on Apex Fusion right now that fits the bill?
So we're fielding quite a few opportunities across different sectors. We are fielding a real estate RWA opportunity. We are fielding an education diploma opportunities in Africa, which again also has some. So digital IDs is still a thing. It still will be a thing in the future. And we're fielding various other things. I know Tom is quite active in Kansas City, where there's a lot of things going on over there. So where there's a lot of city-oriented things going on, which Tom is spearheading. So we're right now at the phase where we just delivered our platform. Our platform was delivered in December last year fully. And now we've kicked off the BD engine and starting to get some green sprouts and some first kind of opportunities to grow and, typical BD funnel, get it down, figure it out, which ones make sense, which ones don't. But we're not going to put it into some, with the exception of Ouroboros Takis, which we do have a CIP and we're going to ask for funding from the foundation and so forth. The rest of it is, working with our foundation and figuring out how we do these things. Some of them will be paid engagements. Some of them will be adoption deals, et cetera, et cetera. We're really just at the beginning of that. We're focusing on making our tech agentic ready, because I think that's going to be the most important side of things. And in parallel, we're working on all these adoption deals, which will become more and more part of our business. Like a bigger part of the ecosystem business is going to be to get a real world adoption.
Your thoughts, your thoughts, Jerry. Another thing about the flavor of the day, basically, which is the privacy oriented chains. Any chance you guys are gonna integrate with Midnight?
I'm open to it. So again, we're digesting a lot of different things here. I've reached out to IOG for a while now, and I've reached out to Midnight. So we're waiting to hear from them, but of course they're busy with their stuff. Yeah, I mean the easy one for us is just to put Midnight on our chain as a cross-chain asset. That's an easy one. After that, yeah, we can explore them, but there are solutions out there from a privacy perspective. Because we're a multi-chain, we can explore those too, right? Also, we can explore our version of privacy at the right time. Canton has a level of privacy, which we can look at and see how we can use potentially as a model. But there's Aztec on, which I think is a layer 2 on Ethereum, right? Which is a privacy layer, which could link to Nexus. That's an option. There's Midnight, which is cross chain as well, that could link to our network. So we've thought about it, and we definitely need to have a solution for that. There's no question about it. Privacy will become more and more important as institutions come on board. For us, the easiest version of privacy is to create a private version of Vector and allow and then have that attached to our network. That's the easiest version of privacy. And then you can have your secure layers on the hardware layer, HSMs, I think they're called, or whatever the terminology is. So for us, the easy version of that, the quick and dirty, let's get it done, enterprise needs privacy, we'll spin up a private version of Vector for you, right? That's the easy one. And then bridge it, and then you'll have a public bridge. You can bridge over back if you want to go public, or you keep it private, and it's not exposed to the public.
Mm-hmm. And I say with everything changing so fast, and I think that in the tech sector we're getting disrupted first by agentic AI because we're seeing it earlier than everybody else. Everybody else is a little bit behind us. What do you kind of see as the future for dApps and their role in Web3, given the direction that AI is going?
They're going away. There will be no dApps. There will be no apps. You're going to be talking to a person. Do this for me. Do that for me. Trade Ethereum for me for USDC. Thank you very much. You're not going to go on a website. What would be the point of that?
You're not going to need to. Yeah, and the agents will be, in some cases, making decisions on the best way to go. They may be selecting which chains to go to, as you said before, based on cost or speed or those types of things.
Right. So a dApp, what is a dApp? A dApp is a capability with a UX, right? The UX is for humans to interact with. And you can think of it as Expedia, right? Expedia has a UX, you go to and so forth. Well, hey Siri, book me a flight from Dallas to Denver on the 7th of March to the 15th of March. Give me the cheapest price. Go. Have I Expedia?
Okay, I found this on the web.
That's great. Look at that. You already did it.
There you go. Experimentation live, right? Who's going to use Expedia? Why would you go on the UX?
Mm-hmm.
It's gone. All that stuff is gone. They're just going to be primitives.
Yeah, the smart contracts themselves, basically, right? So that would have to be called.
Even beyond that, I would say. I would go one step further. That they're going to, as long as the protocol is smart contract ready, they're going to code. Why do they need a smart contract?
So pure transactions flying back and forth, but in the background, there's a logic.
And the AI is the brain.
Yeah.
The AI is the smart contract, right?
That's interesting.
So I think all that dissolves, or if it doesn't dissolve, it's just in the background.
Yeah. I mean, I can see the use cases for putting smart contracts still on the blockchain because there's auditability, and you definitely know that the smart contract will do what you want it to do, rather than like AI improvising and deciding that you don't want to go to Denver. Let's just book you a flight to Los Angeles because
it's going to show me what it's doing, and then I have to approve it as a human, right?
Yeah.
And I would tend to agree with you that because AIs right now are probabilistic systems, you don't want to do deterministic stuff, right? And so, but this is where our chain and Cardano shines. It's deterministic, it's formally verifiable, all that kind of stuff. Where validity and account base are still a bit fluid, right? Like I can't if I see blind signing one more time, I'm gonna fucking break my computer, right? Like give me access to all, and I lost some money on a hack a couple months ago.
Oh wow, tell us about that.
It wasn't a lot because I always segregate things and I was just experimenting with something. But yeah, it stole my USDC, so I lost $1,000. Okay, because I gave it a freaking blind signing to do it. So that stuff needs to go away. You can't give full access to an AI. You need to give it permissions and constraints. And the UTXO based model, Haskell, is far superior for those types of things to constrain the AIs. Far more superior.
On this note, Jerry, I wanted to basically have the opportunity for you guys to have any closing remarks as we are nearing our the end of the interview. Any closing thoughts to the viewers and the rest? This is the time to go.
Yeah, I mean, I could say never been more frustrated with the market, but more optimistic about the future. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, yeah. I would mirror that sentiment and say that anybody who's working in Web3, AI, or tech right now is just hang in there. The work that you're doing now is definitely going to pay off, both in terms of what you can do and being ahead of the curve and changing the world, but also in help guiding everybody else into this new territory because nobody has any idea what it's going to be like. So the people with the knowledge who are doing the work now are very well positioned to usher us into this new era.
Yes, it's you guys definitely captured the sentiment right now, and I think in a few short months, I think we'll be looking at this time, saying that oh my gosh, we were so spot on. And I wish you guys all the best, Jerry. I'm super excited for Apex Fusion, and I'm hoping that in a few months we'll have you back and talk about the things that you guys have onboarded onto this chain.
Thank you.
Hey Tom, that was a great interview. I really enjoyed talking to Jerry and you, of course. But I in this particular instance, I definitely wanted to get your view of what Apex Fusion is doing from a commercial standpoint and where you guys are going, and you know what's the future in the crypto in general from the lens of the Apex Fusion executive team.
Yeah, right. So I think we're positioning ourselves a little bit more in the traditional enterprise space because so much of the team comes from an enterprise background. Like many of us before we got into Web3, we worked for traditional software in telecommunications, in integration companies, fraud detection, lots of people who are into like project management and for big firms. And so we kind of have that in our DNA. And it's really what brought a lot of the current team together is kind of sharing that original ethos. And the team has really become strong, much like the tech that we deploy is battle tested. We really have a battle tested team, and our network extends across all kinds of different ecosystems, right? So that's one thing about Web3 is there really is this kind of family element in a way that you connect with people over the work and over the knowledge and over the experience of working in Web3, and you just have this extended network that's globally. So I think part of it is just about doing what you might think of as like traditional boring software activities, right? Like integrations and infrastructure and preparing for this next wave so that we're well positioned for agentic AI. But the other thing that we're seeing is that there is a lot of pent up demand for tokenization projects specifically. There are, of course, companies that are at the forefront of this, but there's a whole bunch of different businesses that are just a tier or two down from that know they need to get ahead of this thing. Maybe they have like a head of blockchain strategy or something in their company, but they don't know how to take their vision and make it a reality. And like we talked about, in the interview with Patrick a few times ago, some of the big hurdles there are around the legal and regulatory elements, right? So there's just levels and levels of complexity. But for people who know how to, say, run a structured workshop and scope a project with a client, come up with an architecture, and then work that through the execution to delivery, this is like a really important time to begin digging in and having those structured, meaningful conversations, right? Because having been in Web3 for as long as we have, right, there's this there's sort of this concept I have called dude with a deck, right? We all know a dude with a deck. You might know hundreds of them, right, who have this great idea, and in their deck they talk about, it's a 200 billion opportunity, but they're just there with their deck. They don't even have a mock-up, right? So being able to go from that conceptual idea into how do you actually make that a reality and then into execution, those are really the strengths that are needed right now to sort of to tap into some of that unmet demand. And it's oftentimes things are complex enough that it's not really always going to work if you just have like one company trying to go out and do it all. You need to work with a constellation of partners. And again, I'll go back to what Patrick was saying, right? When they did the tokenized gold project, he worked with Endmaker on one side, and then he had Fluid Tokens as a partner, and he had, I think it was IMX, if I got that right, that did the legal and compliance, and it took those three partners to come together. And so this, I think, is an important skill for the future, is much in the way that blockchain is decentralized. It's also an analogy for the opportunities that, and how people are going to be working going forward. Same thing applies to agents, right? Every humans and agents working together to plug into different ways and kind of solve these problems. So there are a number of different leads that we've been working for a long time. And given now the prominence of agents coming up, I think the approaches to some of those opportunities will be changing, but we're continuing to work those things, especially in the Gulf states.
Well, that sounds awesome. And the way you mentioned how things are going to work, and you're much closer to this than I am. I think for chains like, Apex Fusion, and especially for HAL8, I think they need to develop sort of an expertise, and I'm sure you have it in-house, to take their tech stack and then use it, or and then basically go to each business case that they want to adopt, analyze it, and find the best application of their tech stack to their needs, whether to reduce cost, increase efficiency, or make something more faster. So if you find, and that kind of skill set will have to be developed in every single ecosystem in order to drive the adoption, because the incumbents, they just, the learning curve is so steep for them that it becomes like a deer in a headlight kind of situation in a way. Some of them might just basically say no, we're not going to do it, and just put their head in the sand. And I think strategically, that's a very bad decision, because then somebody else, their competition, is going to adopt one way or another the blockchain infrastructure for their needs. And there's many to choose from, but
yes,
I think the most important thing a blockchain infrastructure or a blockchain platform can do is just basically go out there. I think to a degree, the Polygon has done it, because they would go to different kind of players and onboard them. Even though, I mean, it's just a layer 2 to Ethereum, right? They knew how to sell that technology to different kinds of commercial players, and I think it's going to be a big differentiator and a driver of adoption. But there is, like, we are not even at the very start of the adoption progress of blockchain eating the world. I think there's going to be so much demand for it. It's just like in early days of internet, when you're, getting corporations to have a website kind of situation, where, the talent that understands this technology comes into your organization and says, you need to be on the internet to increase the presence and revenues and things like that. It always has to tie with some economic benefit to the incumbents to actually pull the trigger.
Yeah. I think it's a superpower more and more these days. I mean, it's always been a superpower, but more than ever, being able to ask the right questions is going to be a game changer for anybody in any industry going forward, right? So, for example, when I connect with somebody that's in any industry who understands the benefit that blockchain can bring to the work that they're doing, I know this is somebody who is curious and who's thinking outside the box and not just, relying on legacy approaches, right? And that ability to ask the right questions, coupled with AI, is what unlocks opportunity, because everybody has access to this now. So, and back to Jerry, right? We were just having a conversation with Jerry yesterday about a deal he was working, and he was basically explaining how he was able to do all the work that you would get from like going to a company like BCG or one of the other big consulting firms, that he went and he used AI to create alternatives for how to set the processes for the deal, the different partners that you would need for the deal. He broke it out, started working on a strategy, and then he put all of that into Notebook LLM and created a podcast about it. Then he shared the podcast with the client so that they could hear an actual interview about what this could be like and what would be involved. And he did that all in a very short period of time. So he's thinking outside the box on that level. And I think there's this trend that it's very curious as I look at it, that we are of course relying on working together across all kinds of domains and geographic boundaries to accomplish a lot of these big goals. But at the same time, everybody that is in business at all is looking at ramping up their own contributions as an individual contributor. Because if you're using agents and you can have the output of 10 people, and then you combine that with the the geographical distribution and the access to talent globally, you're talking about all boats rising on a level that we can't really conceive of. And we are at the start of that. And I think everybody has fatigue from in crypto for sure, of saying like we're early. Like when I hear that, it makes me want to vomit. But it is still, it's just at the beginning. And in the same way that we can kind of think about some of these concepts like the technological singularity, these different models where you see what you would call a Precambrian explosion or exponential growth. It's like it looks like it's changing a little, and then it just goes like straight up, right? So we are at a crazy inflection point. It is really challenging for people, but I think if we all lean into it in the right way, we'll come out on the right side.
Well, that's an amazing thought, Tom, and the one that you know is a great one to basically close off this episode. The age of abundance is upon us, basically.
Age of
Is
abundance.
so. I mean, the number of people will stay the same more or less, or it's not going to grow as much. But the output, I believe, is going to just explode. And when you increase the quantity, the price goes down. So what are you going to do with your time when the time comes? Anyway, thanks everybody for joining us for this episode. I hope you liked and enjoyed the content. If there's anything you would like me to cover or anything you want me to change in these episodes or explore further, please don't hesitate to leave a comment, subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.